Welcome to the Nomad Futurist podcast, where ideas shape the future and visionaries redefine what's possible. Join us as we dive deep into the evolution of technology, society, and human potential, spotlighting the voices driving change and reimagining our world. Connect with us and join us at media.nomadfuturist.org. The future is a story we write together. Let's kick it off. Here are your hosts, Phil and Nabeel.
Hello, welcome to Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabeel Mahmood, calling in from Scottsdale, Arizona.
This is your co-host, Phillip Koblence from Montclair, New Jersey.
And Jeff Moerdler from Midtown Manhattan.
I think, of all the people we've ever had announce themselves, all you had to say was hello, and I think the entire audience would be like, Jeff Moerdler.
They all know me.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. This has been way overdue. We've been trying to get you on, but at the end of the day, you were forced to leave counsel or attorney. Is that right, Bill?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I guess we've been trained well. Jeffrey, good to have you. Let's get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started before we could get into the nitty-gritty stuff of technology space.
Sure. I'm a transactional commercial real estate lawyer by background. Grew up at a big New York law firm, K. Scholler of blessed memory. And in 1986, I did a radio station deal there, the real estate side of it. And I left K. Scholler, went to a small firm to build up a real estate department. My first big client of my own was American Express. I participated in a RFP beauty contest and won. And I was hired as a national leasing counsel. That was in 1989. In 1990, I got a phone call from one of their business people saying, "We've got 2 new transactions for you." I said, "Great, what are they? Office leases, retail leases?" They said, "No. The first one is we're building 2, in those days they were called carrier hotels, before the term data center, in Phoenix, and you're our real estate lawyers, so you're representing us on them." I said, "Great, what's a carrier hotel?" They proceeded to tell me, and it kept getting more and more interesting. So they tell me about the infrastructure in the building and the wiring and the connectivity. And then they say, we're putting 6 30-foot satellite antenna dishes in the backyard of these 2 buildings. And that leads to the second transaction. The second one is we want to create our own private network over satellite to link every facility we have in the United States back to those 2 data centers. And we need you to write for us provisions giving us roof rights and riser rights. So I wrote the first institutional quality program to get right to put satellite antenna dishes on the roof, use the riser to bring wiring down to the premises, lateral into the space, riser down to the basement, lateral and right to put in a point of entry in the foundation and out to the nearest manhole to connect for copper for redundancy. This is in 1990. Over the next 2.5 years, we amended 1,000 leases around the United States to give American Express roof rights. And that was the beginning of a journey that has led to nowadays 80 or 90% of my practice being in data centers and other digital infrastructure, a lot of distributed antenna systems, cellular, building wiring, but data center is the biggest component. And I lead a team of about 10 people, half here in New York where I sit, and others in our Boston, Washington, LA, and San Francisco offices, doing deals all around the country and some out of the country.
What's fascinating to me is that normally we have this platform has been for the people that are in leadership positions across the operational data center world, right? Whether they're operating large-scale data center companies or multi-tenant sites or hyperscalers or what have you, and all the underlying infrastructure in between. I think what's missing from all that people kind of just assume was always in place, is essentially the legal language that has enabled that entire world, which was non-existent. You think, the data, obviously it's just legalese, right? You just put a couple of therefores and wheretofores and you cite things, but you literally invented a language to deal with this physical, actual infrastructure to support this. And part of that is like you invented a language, which is just fascinating.
One
In a way,
thing,
You're right.
mid and late 90s was I took a bunch of telecom engineering courses, 1, 2, 3-day courses to understand the language and the technical side of it. And it's fascinating. In transactions I'm involved with, a substantial number of them, I spend a lot of my time educating other lawyers who don't understand it. And you get questions like, well, I want the same alteration rights in a data center lease that I get in an office building so I can put up sheetrock walls wherever I want. Might slightly impact airflow in the data center and our ability to cool it and our ability to meet SLAs, service level agreements. And no, you can't put up sheetrock walls or carpeting.
I think you just made a great point there, Joe, and that is that though the legal element or the legal wording for that matter has been around for centuries, you still have to understand the business case and the business that you're representing in part of and education is very, very important. But before we get into all of that, a quick question for you is, as a child growing up, was law something that you really wanted to pursue? And if so, what was the driver behind that?
So I am a third generation lawyer, the first non-litigator in those 3 generations. Both my mother's parents were lawyers. My mother's brother was a lawyer and a legislator and a judge. And my father's a litigator. And I worked as a paralegal on my father's team while I was in college. And I said, wow, this is really interesting, but I want to try something else. So when I was in law school, first summer after the first year of law school, I worked mostly doing litigation. And after the second year of law school, I said, I want to try something else. I tried transactional work at K. Scholler in real estate. I loved it, and I never looked back.
So is the next generation in law as well?
So none of my kids are lawyers. One is in construction and project management. One of my nieces is a lawyer. And even though my 3 kids are all in their 30s and established in their careers, my father has not given up trying to convince them to take a leave of absence and go to law school.
The Moerdler law world must go on. The legacy lives on. It sounds like obviously everyone's a lawyer, right? You say it, and I hear the line from my cousin Vinny, which is like, my father was a mechanic. My 3 brothers on my father's side were mechanics. That's all I'm hearing is Marissa Tomei. And so as a child growing up in Kingsbridge, you're a son of New York.
I'm a Bronx boy my entire life, never lived anywhere else, still live in the Bronx.
Still live in the Bronx. Move over J-Lo. We have the original.
Although most
J-Mo. We have J-Mo from the Bronx.
Most people don't consider Riverdale part of the Bronx, but I do.
Hey, fancy Bronx counts. So you grew up, what were you interested in as a kid? Brothers, sisters, are they all lawyers? Give us a little sense into what the baby Moerdler was like.
So my brother is a computer jock who sold his company and reinvented himself. And he's now, for the last, 15 years, an analyst covering the software industry. My sister went to law school, but has basically been raising a family for many years. And I just watched my father and liked what I saw. And kind of unique thing was watching him as a trial lawyer, but also a deal maker, putting deals together to settle litigation and avoid litigation. And the deal making side is what interested me much more.
And what did he practice?
So he spent 55 years as head of litigation at a Wall Street firm, Struck and Levan. And when that firm imploded a year and a half ago at age 89, he changed jobs and went to another law firm. And people say to me, Jeff, what's your retirement plan? I say, I don't know. I like what I do. Call me when I'm 89.
All right. So you get involved with American Express. You start exploring the data center space. Back then it was not data center. What made you so passionate about it to pursue it further?
I kind of fell into it by accident. It was a series of events. The American Express work was the first piece. The second piece was that small firm I had gone to when I left. Kay Scholler brought in a corporate partner who did finance and M&A work in the radio and TV station industry. And he brought me in, and I'm doing in the mid-90s antenna tower leases on the original Twin Towers, the Sears Tower in Chicago, John Hancock in Boston, Transamerica in San Francisco, all over the United States doing studio leases and antenna tower leases. And then in the mid to late 90s, cellular started rolling out. And I admit I had my one epiphany in life. And I said, this is real estate of the airwaves. No access to the real estate, no access to the airwaves. And I started speaking at both real estate industry and communications industry conferences about the real estate aspects of telecom and technology. And that just exploded and led to this whole practice doing data centers and fiber and cellular and in-building wireless DAS systems and all sorts of technology.
Now, growing up when your father being in litigation and being in the Wall Street business, this was something relatively very new. Didn't really know what the future of the sector is going to be. How did that conversation go? Hey, Dad, what you do is great. It's worked for you for 8-9 years. I'm going to pursue a different direction. We don't know if this market is actually even going to survive.
The going into real estate was easy because he did a lot of real estate litigation. He was commissioner of buildings in the first Lindsay administration in New York. And a lot of his clients were real estate and still are real estate developer, owner, operators. So that part of it was an easy transition. He didn't give up for many years on but going back to being a litigator. And I also spent a year after law school clerking in the federal district court. So I kind of learned how to avoid and why to avoid litigation. The technology piece, my father was actually the first lawyer in a law firm in the United States to have a Lexus red computer search terminal on his desk in his office. The only ones who had them were people who worked for Lexus. He was the first lawyer in the country to test it. He was also the first lawyer in the country not working for Lexus to have a terminal at home. And I grew up using those when I was in college and law school. And he's always been very interested in technology, but not really in the legal side of it. So I kind of took it in a different direction, building on my real estate background and the accidental development of a specialty in the area, doing work for American Express, then the radio and TV stations, then representing real estate owners on cellular sites, and just decided to start marketing it. And I think it was 97 or 98, I wrote my first article on telecom infrastructure. It was called Found Money, about how adding cell sites and POPs and telecom closets and fiber into buildings could generate value for real estate owners. And that, plus speaking at conferences and writing other articles, just led to the development of this practice.
And coming up with the most brilliant marketing strategy in history, which is Mintz Mince, which I think is your really claim to fame.
I didn't come up with it.
Okay, you were the distributor, though.
I'm in shipping and handling.
Right.
Every conference I speak at, our marketing people send a couple of cases of Mintz Mince, and people stop me all the time and
Right.
say, "You are the Mince guy." And I
Right,
said,
you're the Mintz guy. See that? Mintz Levin, there should be a Moerdler in there. There is not. If anybody is wondering out there why Jeff Moerdler's dad had a car in his office, he did not. He's not referring to Lexus, the automobile. He is referring to LexisNexis, which is like the search platform that legal documents are used to monitor that stuff. There have been ebbs and flows in our industry. I mean, you've been in the industry longer than I always say. I've been in this industry as long as it's been an industry to be in. You have been in this industry before it was an industry to be in. We have seen since that 1990 kind of Carrier Hotel deal that you did with American Express. We saw the Telecommunications Act of 1996. We saw the bubble burst. Is it 86? Wasn't it 96? Come on, it's 96. Oh, we're going to do a fact check. Does anybody, Mr. Moerdler, if you can hear me, can you check your red LexisNexis thing about when the Telecom Act? 96. Look at that. Win one for Phil. So for those main things, like the bubble bursting specifically, 10 years into your thing, turn of the century, you're just getting started at Mintz, right? You started in 2000, according to my big, LexisNexis style research on my end. Well, those inflection points of when this industry started taking hold and then started failing and starting to be tumultuous in some way.
A year after I showed up at Mintz, my largest client went bankrupt after having done millions of dollars a year in legal work for them. They fell apart. They were in a early stage piece of the telecom real estate industry known as building-centric telecom providers. They were putting shared infrastructure in office buildings, in those days sharing copper T1 and T3 lines and early fiber OC1, OC3 lines among multiple tenants in the building. And that industry just died about a year after I joined Mintz. It was scary. I spent the next few years joined at the hip with my bankruptcy restructuring partners involved in the bankruptcies of those clients and companies like MCI, WorldCom, and others. And the industry kept bouncing back. And it really, I think, dramatically changed over the last 5 years, because one of the things when I speak at some conferences I do is I have a slide in one of my slide decks about the evolution of personal technology. And 10, 15 years ago, if you looked around a room of people, there would be at most an average of one connected device per person, a cell phone. But today, if you look around a room, you're going to have, I know I have my cell phone, my Apple Watch, my laptop, my MiFi personal hotspot with me most places I go. And we're all taking millions of photographs, saving them and backing them up in multiple places. The industry isn't going away, and AI is just sort of the next expansion point in the industry.
Did you have a concern that the industry may be going away? Like when you first got into, obviously the one thing that this proves, by the way, is the fact that he could just go to the bankruptcy council. Is lawyers always win, right? Even on the implosion, he's like, oh, more fees. It's incredible. It's incredible. The Moerdler, the house always wins. No, the Moerdler always wins. But did you have a concern that this industry that you were so excited about was going to be heavily disrupted? I remember when I do slide decks in like a STEAM classroom, I will show a deck that says from 1999, the internet is just a fad, or just other articles that came out that suggested that this is not really something that's going to take off and become an instrumental part of our daily lives. And did you feel that that might have been the case at the time?
Well, we all, for many years, have been linked to our computers, and telecom internet is just a way of linking all those computers together. Then we saw the growth of the cloud, which is really just outsourcing the management and operation of a company's computer servers and storage and processing. I was, in the last at least 20 years, not worried the industry would go away. On the other hand, I don't think I could have predicted the direction it has gone in. And I'm still a little questioning where it's going to go from here and how is AI going to be utilized long term and where are the business cases for all the AI capacity that we're building today. But I don't think the industry was ever a concern to me that it would go away, at least in the last 20 years, maybe in the earlier stages.
I mean, there's always been a naysayer trying a new experience for the Bronx and Gates in 1993 making a statement, internet, who's going to use it, to now myself being an internet company.
Well, we had also Larry Ellison on stage saying the cloud is stupid. I never want to be the cloud. And now Oracle's like, you can't get on Sirius satellite radio without Oracle cloud infrastructure being at the top of everyone's commercial list.
So I understand that you haven't had the opportunity to see from really the birth of the infrastructure to all the moves, migration, different strategies. Based on what you know today, where do you think the future is? I mean, like guys and show and beauty, right? I mean, it's going to change. Business is going to transform. What do you see the future to be of the data infrastructure space?
I think it's here to stay, and it's only going to continue to grow and become more and more involved in our everyday lives. I think we have to be careful about how that happens. I was at one of my kids' houses last night for a play date with several of my grandchildren, and I'm worried about how much time they spend on their iPads, at what age they're going to get cell phones, how the availability of access to all sorts of information that may or may not be appropriate for kids is going to evolve over the next few years, how AI is going to evolve, and how much of our lives it will control. So it's very much a brave new world that we have to monitor carefully.
So the usage type of server is becoming a concern. I mean, I think we are all victims of that. But as it entails to some core concerns with data privacy, regulation, intellectual property, discrimination, fairness, autonomy, or accountability, all that, they're all security. I mean, are those things from a legal perspective that are something that you're looking into or would be looking into?
Full Employment for Lawyers Act. I have the pleasure of being at a law firm that's been at the cutting edge of technology. When they hired me almost 25 years ago, it was because I was an oddity. I was a real estate lawyer who was a technology lawyer, and the firm is very focused on technology broadly. And it's great because I have a terrific team of people that I interact with in our corporate M&A practice who do telecom and technology transactions, in our IP practice who do cutting edge protection and litigation over technology, IP, data privacy, data security, HIPAA, the communications regulatory FCC side of it in the healthcare technology world. It's all fascinating and it all overlaps and links together. And that's the advantage of being at a firm that is sensitive to technology and wants to grow that side of the practice.
So with all these varied laws, just let's say for the sake of conversation across the United States, I mean, there's 50,000 jurisdictions. I don't know if that's the accurate number. Somebody might want to do a fact check, but there's so many different jurisdictions just within the United States, and there's no commonality. I mean, county, city, municipality, state, and country in itself. You know, certain things can work in certain areas and it won't in other areas. Like, how do we get past that challenge from data infrastructure to real estate and law, and blend technology in it so we can actually all speak a unified language? And then with globalization of data, as we move forward, are we going to be at one place in the near future, maybe a decade out or so, that we potentially might all speak the same legal language?
So that is a concern. The federal government has supremacy and exercise it in certain areas. The FCC controls access to a lot of the technology on a national level, but there's also lots of local regulation. You're right. And if you want to site a new data center, for example, or put up an antenna tower for a cellular network, or a wired network, you have to comply with both those federal regulations as well as the state and local regulations, and sometimes they conflict. And navigating that is challenging. But so far, it seems to work, and we are able to develop the technology. Could it be a little better coordinated to encourage speedier development of new technology and, for example, build out of fiber into rural area? And there's efforts made to do lots of these things. But you're right, it is complicated because of the multi-layered nature of our society and laws in the U.S. as a conglomeration of states with jurisdictions under them.
To that point, so much of the legal basis of these laws are the lawmakers trying to understand like the metrics through which they determine laws, whether it's financial metrics or what have you. And I'm struck by any time I see a congressional hearing and it involves, let's say, the TikTok thing or whatever. And you have the people that are put in positions of authority over the laws ask the most fundamentally like obtuse questions you could possibly imagine. Like if you plug, I think what was one of the questions? If you plug your headphones into a phone, can the Twitter app hear your thoughts? I think was an actual question that was asked in a congressional hearing. And those are the people that are tasked with creating laws. So I can't tell if a lot of the fact that we have been able to continue as an industry to evolve is as a consequence of the lawmakers just not understanding what is going on, or are there actually laws that exist? Is it more of a workaround where you're being like, yes, it's not really, it's fine, it's probably fine, and they're just taking your word for it because they just don't understand? How do we continue to evolve as a society with lawmakers that simply do not understand how technology works, that have not taken the classes that you took in the late 90s to understand how telecommunications works?
It can be a problem. That's why we have to rely on experienced people in government agencies and lawmakers talking to industry. But in many cases, regulation is 5 years or 10 years behind the evolutions in technology and industries, and they're playing catch up.
Well, that's what they need to join the Nomad Futurist Academy.
Right.
The shameless plug right there.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's not just the kids that we need to educate. It's many of the adults that are not digital natives, as it were.
One of the things, being in real estate, as we grow as a sector, so last year we computed roughly about 45.3 gigawatts of power, what equates to roughly 1.5% of the global power production. And our needs as a data sector vertical is growing significantly. What's projected is a 3x growth by 2030. We are limited on resources, though there is the physical real estate available to design, build, and operate the data center, but we don't have enough energy. Are you getting those conversations, in particular leading the question whereby there are talks of other energy sources such as nuclear and hydrogen? How far along are we, and is that a possibility to potentially engage in the upcoming years?
So I now spend time every single day on the phone with my colleagues in our energy practice. And I think the data center industry in particular has suffered three major changes that have dramatically evolved the space. The first one was about 7 or 8 years ago when the cloud developed, the outsourcing of operation of a company's data centers and storage capacity. And then about 3 years ago, we had two more major changes. One was when Dominion Power made the announcement in August of 2022 that they couldn't provide power for the data center sites in Northern Virginia that they had committed to provide power to, let alone the ones that had not yet received commitments, and they were 5 to 10 years behind. That was all compounded by the supply chain problems during COVID. And then at the same time, we had a move in the opposite direction. The release of ChatGPT and the explosion in AI leading to more needs for data center processing and storage capacity. So the industry has been reeling, trying to deal with those evolutionary issues over the last few years. And I literally am on the phone every day with my energy contracting colleagues who do the power. And a big evolution in my practice that I never would have expected over the last 2 years has been the explosion of developing powered land sites and acquiring control of real estate, getting the power, getting the permitting and approvals, and putting together sites for future data centers because of this exponential growth in the industry as a result of the kind of remapping of the internet to work from home during COVID and the explosion of AI and the power problem.
Are we ready for nuclear? I mean, think about it this way, right? 20% of the American energy production is nuclear, but we're still stuck in 5 to 7 years.
I'm probably working on 30 different powered land deals right now, and a third of them, I'd say, are behind the meter, off the grid power sources. None nuclear. One of them has a contract for future nuclear. I think nuclear is the future of the data center industry, but it's not here today. It's not today's resource that's available. It's the next generation. And there are people saying that we'll have nuclear in operation powering data centers in 3 to 5 to 7 years. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I think 7 to 10 years at a minimum, if not more than 10 years, because of the litigation that's going to stand in the way. People don't want to say, oh, there's a small nuclear power plant powering a data center half a mile from my house. Is it going to turn my grass purple? And, what's going to happen to the water supply? And I think the nuclear is safe, personally, and is a great resource. But I think
But even you still wouldn't want it in your backyard.
Glad to put one in your
Of course.
It's fine.
So it's a future, but it's not today. And we have to deal with that bridge to get to it, which is utility power, much of which is still non-sustainable. But I'm doing deals involving solar, wind, battery storage, geothermal. I had a hydro deal, a lot of natural gas, cogen, and the one I find the most interesting is hydrogen-powered data centers. So there's a lot of new technology out there, and we're going to need to take advantage of all of it to provide the capacity because the utilities are very slow moving, and it takes a long time to get permits and approvals to build a power plant or to build high tension transmission lines. And there's going to be a lot of development of alternative power sources and co-locating them with the data center behind the meter or partially or totally off the grid.
You alluded to bring a great point, like bring your own power, right? So, hydrogen, natural gas, so certainly do great offers to consider. When you talk about hydrogen, what kind of bothers my mind is like, you can get away with hydrogen, but nuclear cannot, especially if you can actually build SMRs that are the same footprint as a hydrogen power. It's as explosive in nature, if not worse, than a nuclear explosion. How did we legally get away?
If you ask Yuval, all it does is create water.
Power and water. Right. Yes, I represent Yuval.
The H-bomb was just a misnomer. It's not, don't worry about that. The two have nothing to do with each other. The one, you alluded to this earlier, which is like, you are not like, obviously we are at a hyper frothy phase of data center development and gigawatts upon gigawatts of space under development, and everybody with land proximate to power thinks that they have the next great data center alley in their backyard. But you alluded to this concept that you're not necessarily convinced that the fundamental use case that is the justification for all of this development that you are representing in many cases is there. Can you expand on that?
Let me be a little clearer there. I think the use case is there, the need and the revenue generation for much of it. The question in my mind is AI is only a piece of the capacity that we're serving today or will be serving in the future. It supplements a lot of the technology that exists today, and it's the next level of it. Whether or not there will be sufficient revenue generated to justify all of capacity being built for AI today, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm smart enough. I would defer to people like McKinsey and Goldman Sachs, and they do say the need will be there. But I'm still convinced that there are going to be a bunch of big, high-profile failures, and some of it will be companies providing AI technology that are unable to convert that technology to a revenue-generating model.
Or more importantly, a profit-generating model.
Yes. True.
Right.
There are a lot of big companies, particularly the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Meta, are all using AI today and generating revenue from it. But there are lots of other companies and maybe some of the divisions of those that may not work out the way people expect.
Which is how all industries evolve, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're just seeing it in real time, right? It's one thing to look in the rearview mirror and recognize that industries evolved over, decades and decades and generations. We just happen to be living it. And what I find about what AI does is it accelerates the process through which we do regular tasks. And what it seems to be doing is it's accelerating the evolution of the underlying infrastructure that powers it. So we're seeing this in such hyper speed that what used to take maybe 25 years to see this evolution, we're probably going to see in 25 months. From whether the GPU is a service, business model changes, and whether you can really cloudify a lot of the kind of AI workloads, or you need a repatriation and you need to allocate infrastructure specifically for individual companies, and whether company sizes across verticals really necessitate the demand for AI that might be underwritten into a lot of these developments.
I agree with you. And in fact, I have a concern about the GPU as a service industry because I see a mismatch there. Those companies are leasing data center space and power on a 10, 15, 20-year basis, and they are customer-facing contracts by the hour, the day, the month, or a year. And that's a mismatch reminiscent to me of WeWork. And I think there will be some failures and restructuring in that space.
What'll be nice is that there'll be plenty of data center capacity coming online that can be used for traditional compute workloads and multi-tenant opportunities.
When I'm advising clients on that, if it's a AI facing, particularly a GPU as a service company, and it's not a credit-worthy counterparty, not a hyperscaler or another large company, I encourage my clients to get a minimum of 25% collateral, be it contribution to CapEx or security deposit or guarantee from a credit-worthy party that's an investor in the GPU as a service startup or whatever. Because if you build a new data center, and if you just use or as a sort of number that's rattled around regularly in the industry, $1 million a megawatt to build it, and if you get 25% collateral and you build that data center, now you have a basis of $750,000 a megawatt. If the GPU as a service or the new technology or the AI company goes bust, you now have a lower basis and a competitive product that's brand new that you can resell. That operates in the first few years, doesn't necessarily operate when you've had them in the space for 5 years and it's no longer a brand new space, but it at least gives you a basis for doing a deal. And we're doing lots of deals on those.
But there's something about, because your angle for a 2-hour industry, your perspective is grounded in the kind of documentation of how business gets done on a more traditional level. It just seems like the perspective of a lawyer looking at digital infrastructure gives you that kind of rationalization. Take a step back. I know it's very exciting and the lights are very blinky and all this technology is super great, but fundamentally, this is a business transaction and you need to understand what the value of the thing that you're building is if everything fails, if you have to redo this to someone else. And I think a lot of times, the entrepreneurial mindset is move quickly and break things and let's just get things done. And you don't understand this technology is so unbelievable. And ultimately, the evolution of things is entirely how you describe it. It is entirely like if you don't learn from the history of failures, you are bound to repeat them. So, we are no longer at the precipice of there is no purpose in digital infrastructure. No doubt digital infrastructure that's built today will eventually be consumed. Will it be consumed in the manner that you are currently underwriting? Probably not. That is best case scenario, but you also have to understand what it looks like in the worst case scenario. And I think that perspective is so unbelievably valuable, which is why you get as much per hour as you get. So I appreciate that.
One of my mottos is hope for the best, plan for the worst. Have a plan B for everything.
And in the case of Moerdler, he's always got the BK division on the phone. So he's got an angle. He's got an angle for
Right. Yes. I can fall back to my roots and go back to being a real estate lawyer.
Well, you've made law great, and I actually never wanted to be an attorney or be in law, but you've actually made it very, very enticing, very exciting. What would you tell the younger self, knowing what you know today, or what would you tell our audience over here as to the future of compute, the data center market, and sub verticals such as small being a part of it to get into the sector?
I think a transformational thing that I did, we talked about earlier, taking those technology courses, understanding how the telecom networks work so that I can talk to the engineers and understand what they're trying to do and accurately, 90%, 80% of the time accurately reflected in the documents, gave me a heads up as to what was going on and an ability to compete effectively with others and excel. I understood the underlying nature. It's no different in any industry. As a lawyer, you're a service provider assisting somebody in doing business. Any involved in business needs to understand their customers and what their customers' businesses are and how they work. And the people who excel in business often spend more effort understanding it. So in my case, it was taking those telecom courses back in the mid and late 90s, although I've taken more all the time. And now I enjoy teaching those classes all the time. So giving back to the community by trying to do some continuing education.
Sounds like Nomad Futurist has a traveling professor in the making that's going to go from law school to law school, extolling the benefits of digital infrastructure law to a group that sorely needs it.
I haven't done too much of it at law schools, although I've done some, but I do it out in business and speaking both at industry conferences, which is how all three of us met, but also speaking at companies. So I've done a lot of this in-house continuing education, and it's a lot of fun. I love it. Love doing it. Love giving to the next generation. And a lot of what I do is focused on sort of the 101, 201 level to introduce people to the space and the issues.
There might be a legal course coming up, folks, and I know at Futurist Academy, Jeffrey just signed himself up for that. So thank you very much, Jeffrey. This has been absolutely amazing. Lovely to have you on the platform. Thank you for sharing your journey and your experiences with the broader audience.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thanks for keeping the breath of our industry fresh for the last 25 years.
With Mintz Mince. Brilliant marketing tool.
Brilliant marketing. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for joining us on the Nomad Futurist podcast. Remember, technology, markets, and challenges will continue to evolve, but those who adapt and prepare are the ones who will thrive. Embrace the change. Stay curious, and let's build a future worth moving towards. The journey has just begun, and we're glad you're here with us. Visit us anytime at media.nomadfuturist.org to stay connected and be a part of the movement. Until next time, keep exploring.